What is up, fellow nerds, and welcome back to the Dapper Snapper Gaming channel, and welcome back to week 1 of playoffs in the UNPL Pokemon Draft League. This week we take on Rose, the coach of the Las Vegas Rotoms, and we are in for a really interesting partial mirror match this week. Before we jump into it, make sure to leave a like on the video and subscribe if you haven't already. And as always, we're going to do a quick team builder, but of course if you'd like to skip ahead, there will be timestamps down below. Now Rose is bringing a really powerful team. Now in case you didn't know how playoffs work in UNPL, all coaches that are in the higher seeds get to pick their opponents for the lower seeds. What's funny is that both Rose and I went unpicked, and so we ended up both having to play each other. So it ended up being kind of funny, and so we just ended up in a bit of a mirror match though, because both of us had the rain teams in each division. That's right, Rose is from the other division, and I am from Naranja, of course. And so we've not played at all this season. We've not seen each other's teams at all this season. So this is really cool to have to adapt here in playoffs to something we've never seen before. He is rocking the Terapagos plus Meowscarada, which is just a nasty combo offensively. Terapagos, of course, is just an amazing mon. It's done work. We luckily dealt with it okay when we had it in our division, but then we lost to everything else on Grum's team. But this time around, it's kind of scary. Azelf is a really good mon. It's really fast. It can be like Sash Lead, or it can be more offensive. It can do several different things, and plus it gets the new move Mystical Power, which raises its special attack every time it uses it. So this thing can snowball if you are not careful. Then Crocodile, really good Intimidate mon. Could be a Moxie Sweeper, although I don't see the Moxie route coming this time around. I could see Intimidate though coming from my Palafin. Then we've got Florges, really nice bulky fairy. Fortress, really good spinner, plus sets up hazards, that kind of thing. Electrode Hisui with Terra this time. Last time we faced Electrode Hisui, it did not have Terra, but this one does, and that's very threatening. Then PELIPPER plus KINGDRA, which is very close to home. We have both of those, and actually shares 2 Terra types with us on KINGDRA. He opted for the poison while we opted for the steel. And finally, Tauros Blaze, which is never coming in this rain matchup. So yeah, we've got a rain mirror match, which is pretty fun, and I think that's really cool. However, it's also terrifying because while my team is pretty hard rain, his team doesn't rely on it nearly as much. And so that makes him a little bit more flexible into this matchup. So we've got to be really, really careful in how we approach this. So let's take a look at what I brought. Starting off, we have our Chaladon, and we are going pretty standard this week. We have the Assault Vest set once again. This is just objectively the best set. It's one of my favorites. Of course, we've switched the EVs up a little bit, but ultimately it's pretty similar. Body Press does really well into his team, and of course, every time that we get hit, we are going to be boosting that defense, which helps out a lot against the Meowscarada or against the Crocodile, if either of those choose to show up. We also have T-Bolt, of course, for his rain abusers. Flash Cannon is really nice for the Florges, or if the KINGDRA decides to be Terra Fairy, that could definitely help out. And then Dragon Tail, of course, for phasing, definitely could be a nice option. Next up, we have Zapdos, and we're going with a Scarfed, more offensive variant this time around. Heat Wave, Discharge, Hurricane, and U-Turn is pretty safe here. You'll see why I'm bringing Heat Wave a little bit later in the team, but I think Heat Wave is okay. It gives me something to hit the Fortress a little bit better with, so that's pretty cool. And otherwise, we're just going to be spamming Hurricanes because his team does not like flying type moves at all whatsoever. So yeah, if it's not the Fortress, we're just going to be spamming Hurricane and see what happens. Next up, Palafin, of course, and this is also Scarfed. We're bringing double Scarf this week, and we are bringing Adamant Max Attack. A lot of speed here, and so we're going to be able to outrun pretty much his entire team, which is really good. We've got Wave Crash, Close Combat, which the combination of those two hits pretty much everything that we need it to hit. And then we have Jet Punch if we need to possibly get some chip or take the last little bit of health off of the KINGDRA if it's in the rain. And then of course Flip Turn for momentum, maybe activate our Zero to Hero, that kind of thing. Next up, our Heat of the Week, and it always seems to be Sableye. Sableye I have had so much fun with this season, and I'm super glad that we are getting to bring this heat. We have Utility Umbrella Sableye, and this is specifically for the opposing KINGDRA. Now you might be wondering, what even is the utility umbrella? I've never seen that item before. I didn't know that existed. And you know what? That's totally fair. It's normally a trash item. In this case, it's really detrimental to an opposing KINGDRA because it does two things. Number one, it makes sure that the KINGDRA does not get its Swift Swim because the utility umbrella blocks any effects of weather. It also then makes sure that my opponent does not get the boost in power on its water moves in the rain, which is really, really cool. I love that tech. It's really fun. We have manual rain in case my opponent decides to not bring the PELIPPER. And I'll just tell you, we didn't bring PELIPPER this week at all. I thought that PELIPPER was actually kind of dead weight, especially if my opponent's going to set up the rain for me. So I saved a slot and didn't bring it. And so we also have light screen because most of his team is special outside of Crocodile or the Meowscarada. And Meowscarada, if it clicks the flower trick, then screens don't matter anyway. So I think light screen is fair and we don't need reflect. And then of course knock off to get rid of any pesky items. Next up, KINGDRA. We are going with a max speed, modest nature. Is this a throw? Possibly, because if my opponent is timid, then my opponent will outspeed me. However, we are Terra Steel this week. I've been Terra Steel all season long and didn't bring it into my own division, and here I am bringing it in playoffs against somebody outside of my division. Is that the way I should have done that? Probably not, but it's what we ended up doing. We've got Hurricane, Flash Cannon, Weather Ball, Draco, pretty standard there. The Hurricane, of course, being the spammable move, and then we've got Flash Cannon for opposing Terra Fairy, Weather Ball just to hit hard with water moves, and then Draco just to hit hard with a dragon move. And finally, we have Lead Tusk, Focus Sash, plus a little bit of speed. We have enough speed this week to outspeed Meowscarada as long as we have a +1 boost from the rapid spin, which is pretty nice. The goal here is to hopefully set up rocks, but even more so is to stop opposing hazards if my opponent leads with some kind of a sash lead, a Zelf. So the play there, if we see a Zelf lead, we click rapid spin turn 1, go down to our sash, and then knock it out with a knockoff turn 2. If we see most other things, then we probably set rocks turn 1. And so yeah, that's pretty free. It depends on what it is. If we see the electrode, that might be the only exception to where we may just click close combat turn 1 and just kind of go from there because it can't KO me. And of course we would just knock it out with a close combat. So that's kind of the idea, and that is your team for this week. I hope that we are going to put on a good show today. Rose has done really well in the other division, and I have been really looking forward to this match. So without any further ado, let's find him and jump right in. Here we go. Rose has brought basically what I expected. I mean, obviously there were a few things that that definitely could have showed up here that that could have been threatening for sure. But the first thing that I notice here is that he didn't bring any of his traditionally physical mons outside of Fortress, but I don't really count that. So this means that all the Spadef investment and the light screen on my Sableye are just that much more important, which is really cool. For once, we're going to stick with our plan and go with the Lead Tusk. Every time that I come up with a plan and then change it at the last second, it backfires on me. And so we're gonna stick with the plan. Our plan is Lead Tusk, and we might click rocks, we might click CC. It just depends on what my opponent wants to lead with. If he leads with the Azelf, we probably click the rapid spin turn 1. If he goes much else, maybe the Pelipper, we probably will just set rocks at that point. But yeah, he has 2 removal options with the Terapagos and the Fortress, so he could be rapid spin on either of those, although of course Fortress is much more likely in this case. So yeah, I've been looking forward to this match. Of course, last season we got this far and unfortunately lost, so I'm just hoping to do a little bit better this season than what I did last season, and I'm hoping that we can do that. So he actually leads off with the Electrode, which is definitely a very obvious lead here. Now, you know, this looks like a really bad time for me, but he may also think, man, this is a bad time for Tusk. He's definitely got to switch so that this Tusk doesn't just go down turn 1 to a Chloroblast or Leaf Storm or whatever it is he happens to have. So I'm just gonna click close combat because I've got Sash, I can live it, and this thing is gone for free. And you know, maybe I'll go down the process, but he over predicts, I guess, and clicks the volt switch as we click CC, and this thing is gone turn 1. Oh my gosh, that is so helpful because this thing is obviously super fast. It doesn't hit super hard, but the coverage it gets is really nice into my team. The electric and grass is stupid good here. So getting that removed turn 1 is absolutely massive. So yeah, being the Sash lead set was huge because that gave me the confidence to actually stay in. If I was pretty much any other set, I never would have stayed in there. Not even a little bit. So yeah, this was definitely huge. So he's got a couple things he could switch into. Of course, PELIPPER is an option if you wanted to go into that. That's pretty bulky on the physical side, and typically I wouldn't have a whole lot to hit that. Instead, he opts to go into the Azelf, and this thing, of course, makes a lot of sense. Now, looking back on this, the real play here was to definitely just click knockoff because it's pretty obvious that he isn't going to be Sash if he didn't lead it. But instead I went with the old plan just to scout for if he is going to be the Scarf set. And so we're gonna find that out, right? So we get taken down to our Sash, and we're going to go ahead and get a rapid spin off, which would make us faster than him unless he is scarfed. And we're really not worried about this if he's choiced, because of course we do have the Sableye in the back that is immune to the mystical power, so I'm not worried about that. We see that he is faster, and that just confirms that he is in fact Scarf. Although if I had just clicked knockoff turn 2, then this would have also been gone, but you know, what are you gonna do? Either way, this is a free switch into Sableye, and yeah, there's no other option that I would want to go into right now, because I mean, he's +2, so going into our Chaladon isn't a great idea, even though it probably could take it. That's just unnecessary damage at this point, and I need to keep that thing as healthy as possible. So yeah, we go into this for absolutely free. No reason to go for anything else because we are immune to the move. And this looks like a free knockoff into whatever my opponent wants to go into. Anything you want to switch into, you can lose your item. I doubt he's going to give me this because this is still very useful. And so yeah, that goes away, and in comes the Fortress. So we get to learn a little bit about this. We get to see if it's Helmet maybe, or Lefties, or even Custat maybe. It is Lefties, which is great to get rid of that passive recovery on this thing. That can definitely be very annoying. So I'm glad to get rid of that. As far as my switch-ins go, I mean, you know, this thing probably just goes ahead and sets rocks here. He could expect the taunt maybe, and so if I went for taunt, then obviously that could be kind of annoying for him, so he may not do that. So I'm going to go ahead and opt for going into my Zapdos here because we did carry the Heat Wave this week. And so yeah, I'm kind of hoping that he'll predict me to click the taunt and go for an attacking move, which is going to, you know, do hardly anything to this. So that's pretty cool. And he actually pulls a double, which is really cool, really cool play. And he actually goes out into the mine, which is the Pelipper, which is a great double switch for us. That's absolutely huge that we are able to get that off. And this is a free discharge. My opponent no longer really has a good switch in to the electric move now that the Hisuian Electrode is gone. And because we are Scarf, we're going to be outrunning most of his team. Anything except Azelf we're going to outrun naturally, unless it's KINGDRA in the rain, obviously, but that's not something he's going to want to switch in here. And goes into the Chestnut, which is pretty cool. I'm glad to be able to get a lot of damage off on this, and we do a ton of damage. This was obviously his check for the Palafin. Looks more physically defensive there because we did a ton of damage on that special side, so I have no reason to click anything else but the discharge once again. Really cool to be able to remove that. That means that there is not going to be any rocks, any spikes, whatever my opponent wanted to go for with that. We do not have to worry about it, which is great. I didn't bring boots on Zapdos this week. Obviously, we are Scarf, so that could obviously be super annoying if he had got the stealth rocks up. So absolutely huge to be able to remove that from the field. As far as what he goes into now, obviously KINGDRA is an option because it will definitely be faster than me. And he's got a couple other things he could go into. If he wanted to go into a Zelf, he could of course be faster than me because it is of course naturally faster than the Zapdos, and it is also Scarfed. So that's definitely an option, but I do think that my opponent is probably going to be looking to remove the Sableye before he goes back into that, just so that he can spam that mystical power, because that move is very spammable and makes a lot of sense. We do actually see the Terapagos instead, which is honestly fine. You know, I faced Terapagos earlier in the season, and it ended up not being too bad to deal with our Chaladon. And I think that that's kind of where we're at with this one again. You know, I can go ahead and get a discharge off, and that would help if he is the Rock Polish set. A lot of people love running that Rock Polish set, and in fairness, it is pretty good. But, you know, if we can paralyze that, then that would negate the Rock Polish, which would be really, really helpful there. I'm just taking some time seeing if there is a better option, if I should switch out into something else. But I think the best play is just to stay in, click discharge. Of course, the Terra Shell is going to activate and weaken a lot of this damage, and it still does about 20%, which is pretty great. And of course, there is that Rock Polish. We did not get the paralysis on that first turn, but we should be able to go for it one more time. We should be able to live anything that this wants to go for and get off one more hit and possibly get off a paralysis, which would be great. He does carry the Ice Beam, which is pretty great for him. No freeze, thankfully, and we get off another discharge, which does about half, and we still don't get it. We still don't get the paralysis, which, you know, it is what it is. So this thing is a little threatening. It's a little threatening, just because it obviously is hitting somewhat hard, and it's pretty fast right now with that Rock Polish. So definitely kind of threatening, but still I think I have a free switch at this point, because he's definitely going for Ice Beam again, because I don't know that he has another move that's going to be all that great. So my plan here is basically call the Ice Beam again, which I don't think is, you know, that crazy of a prediction. And then we might be able to get the Palafin activated and then double back out into something else. That seems like a viable option, because it's kind of difficult to set that up in this matchup without giving away too much position. I thought about it, ended up just staying in and giving my opponent this. I probably should have just gone into the Palafin at this point. I could have preserved my Scarf on this, but at the same time, I'm slower than this now. I'm always going to be slower than the Azelf. So, you know, it is what it is. This gives me a free switch into our Chaladon, which should be able to take anything that my opponent wants to go for. I'm not sure if he's carrying the Earth Power or if he's carrying the Terra Starstorm. It just depends on what my opponent wants to go for. But of course, the Body Press is super free here, and I don't have any reason to click anything else. We're AV, so we're going to take this hit really well. He actually carries Aura Sphere over Earth Power, which makes a lot of sense, and we take that pretty well thanks to that AV, which is great. We click the BP, and this is gone. So Terapagos, not too bad. Did take out the Scarf Zapdos, unfortunately, but I think that is an absolutely worthy trade, because Terapagos could have been really, really problematic in that late game. So being able to remove that with our staple remover, I'm pretty happy about that. So really cool. As far as what my opponent wants to go into now, you know, he didn't bring any of his physical attackers, and so the defense boosts really aren't going to be paying dividends like what they would be if he had brought something like Crocodile or something like the Meowscarada. So that is what it is. It does serve to boost my Body Press damage, but, you know, that only goes so far. There's not really a whole lot that my opponent wants to go for here, so I'm just going to click T-Bolt. I probably could have called this double and you know, it would have been fine, but he does go out into his Azelf here, and we're going to get a free T-Bolt off on this, which is pretty cool. That does a decent amount. If we had Electro Shot here, man, that would have been the play, but unfortunately we did not this week because I wasn't sure if rain would be up or not. Should have just went with it, and he goes for Thunder, and that does about 50 damage, not that much to us. and we are going to be able to take this out as well. So huge. His Scarfer is now gone, which means that our Palipin is going to be the fastest thing on the field in the late game, which feels really good. Our Chaladon has done some work this season, but not all that much. So it's really nice that it's, you know, carrying its weight here at the end. And we do get the KINGDRA switch in here, which is pretty scary. Now I'm kind of forced into a 50-50 here because he could go for the Fairy Terra, predicting me to go for the Dragon move. So I can either click Flash Cannon if I'm calling that Terra, or I click Dragon Tail to get this out of here. And even if he's Water or the Poison, I should be able to live one hit and then go from there. I'm gonna go ahead and call that Fairy Terra here and expect him to go ahead and do that. I'm not sure what Terra he is at this point. I do think that Poison is not a great option into my team, so I think there's a 0% chance of that. He could be Water, but he ends up not going for the Terra at all, so I do over-predict here, unfortunately, and we're going to end up paying for that. So we go for Flash Cannon. It's going to do negligible damage to this. We do get a Spit F drop, which is cool, but ultimately it's not going to end up making a huge difference. Shouldn't have over predicted there. That's on me. And we're going to click Dragon Tail here, but of course the Dragon Pulse is going to be plenty in order to take out the Archaladon. So that is gone. Over prediction ended up costing me Archaladon, which is unfortunate when I could have gotten a ton of damage off onto this, but oh well. This does give me a free switch though into my Sableye, and of course I am threatening the Thunder Wave here. I'm not going to click that though because I think it is a little too obvious that that might be what I'm going for, so he would switch out. I don't think he stays in on this, and of course he does switch because he definitely does not want this to get paralyzed, or else he's in a really bad position. But of course, Pelipper, it really doesn't matter if it gets paralyzed. He's not really worried about that. We do get the light screen off though, which is great. So we're now taking significantly less damage. And what's cool is now Pelipper is here with no rain, and that feels pretty good. At this point, I'm like, can I go into Palipin and get that activated? Yeah, might as well. Let's go for it. He's probably not clicking Hurricane here. He may not even click the Water move. If he does, then we're good. He most likely U-turns here, and so I might as well get this set up, and then I can always flip turn out myself since I'm going to be guaranteed faster than anything on his team. He does go for that U-turn, of course, and so yeah, we're sitting pretty good right now. We're going to have our Palipin activated after this turn, which is really nice. And if he wants to go back into KINGDRA, that's fine, but it does not have the rain, so that's pretty nice for us. He thinks about this for a little while, you know, and eventually does go back into the KINGDRA, which makes sense. KINGDRA has some okay bulk all around. It's not like he really had a choice though, because he's only got his 2 members left. It's a 3-2 at this point, and so we're gonna go ahead and click that flip turn. Of course it does nothing, but that gets us activated. We actually crit, which ended up, you know, that doesn't make a huge difference, but that's fine. We go ahead and get our Palipin activated here, even though it is late. And I figured that I can take a hit with him not being in the rain, and of course with the light screen up, I should be okay to go back into Sableye. And of course I am threatening him with a possible Thunder Wave here. He goes for the Dragon Pulse, which is huge because that tells me he does not have Draco. And again, I'm just going to click Knock to see if he wants to stay in, because I don't think he wants to. His losing condition here is by staying in and letting me Thunder Wave that, and he is not about to let me do it. So that makes total sense. He doesn't know about the tech and just how detrimental that would be, but it's all good. We get the knockoff here, does a good chunk, and we get rid of its lefties, which is cool. It means it would have been really nice if we had gotten rocks up early, because then this would have been taking chip every time it switched in, which would have been really cool, but oh well, it is what it is. We find that we've only got 1 more turn of screen, which is a little unfortunate. My timing on the screens is a little awkward, but I should be able to freely switch into my KINGDRA here. And I don't think that there's anything that my opponent can go for that would KO me at this point, so I should be fine. Hurricane will hurt, but I'll be okay, and then I can always Terra Steel afterwards in order to take another one. So he does go for that Hurricane here. It does a decent chunk. It's not a 2-hit KO, but my opponent could go for it again, going for the possible confusion hacks, which could definitely be pretty rough. But to me, it's a free hurricane at this point. If he wants to leave this in, it likely goes down. If he wants to switch into KINGDRA, it takes a ton of damage. He's not in a great position at this point, and of course this sets up my KINGDRA to be in a better spot later. In hindsight, I probably shouldn't have Terra'd here. I probably should have just stayed neutral and just clicked the hurricane, because that would have shored up my play for later. Because what this does here is that this takes away that surprise factor against his KINGDRA. And so we do end up taking this out. So the way I should have done this was not Terra at all there. And then next turn when he goes for the Dragon Pulse, I then Terra and then click Draco and the game's over, right? Not what I did. So unfortunately, I did not do that. So now what I have done is I've left myself open for my opponent to be able to click the possible water move and deal a ton of damage to me. So big misplay on my part. I should not have Terra'd there that early. Definitely was not the play. Yeah, so a little unfortunate there. Are we out of? Are we screwed because of it? No, I don't think so. I'm gonna go ahead and click the hurricane, but of course my opponent is going to be faster than me if he is timid. And what's nice though is that he is now without PELIPPER. So once the rain is gone, we're good, we're done. So that's totally fine. He does click the Scald, and it is plenty in the rain, which makes sense. Again, I should have just not Terra'd, but oh well, you live and you learn, and possibly lose from it. So yeah, this is gonna end up being close. So my next of course is going to be the Sableye, and we are going to set the light screen back up just as an insurance here, because I don't want to be taking a ton of damage if I don't have to. So we're gonna go ahead and do that first thing, and then we will trick that utility umbrella over next turn. Goes in, clicks the Scald. Of course, he is going to be choiced here, but the rain stops, so that is a lot of the power gone, and I'm going to take a little bit more power here as I go ahead and click the knockoff, and I do survive, which is great. I get burned, but it doesn't really matter. We're not here to really deal damage with Sableye this week, so we get a little bit off and get rid of the specs, so now it is dealing even less damage. And we need to go down this turn, but I don't really have anything better to do. I can't switch directly into Palafin, because if he Scald burns me, I'm in a rough spot. So I think right here I have to stay in, but I can't Rain Dance. So I'm just gonna go ahead and click Trick, just to be able to show off my tech, because I didn't really have anything else to click. I just don't want Palafin taking any extra damage and possibly getting burned. That would be really bad. So he does click the Hydro here. That does go ahead and take out my Sableye, which is fine, and we are now down to our last Mons each, which is pretty scary. Obviously, we are guaranteed faster here, but basically the way that this should work is, now that my opponent is dealing a lot less, it all comes down to his Terra. I can two-shot him if he is Terra Fairy, unless I get burned with Scald. So his only win condition right now is to be Terra Fairy and me over predict, because if he does Terra Fairy and I click the water move, he goes down. If I click the close combat, I still two-shot, but I don't believe I do with burn. So yeah, if he is Terra Fairy, then that's definitely what he needs to go for at this point, and he could still end up bringing this back, because this definitely is kind of tough. But he does not go for the Terra at all, and we end up taking a narrow 1-0 victory. We found out after the battle that he was actually Terra Water. Originally he was Terra Fairy, but in fairness, if he had Terra'd earlier in the match into Fairy, then we would have known, and of course clicked the Wave Crash there, and it would have ended the same way. So yeah, really cool match with Rose. Super fun mirror match, and I had an absolute blast. So absolute GG's to my opponent, and I'm so pumped. We made it past the first week of playoffs, which is huge. We did better than last season, and that's really all I can ask for, right? We will absolutely take that. So next week, we're going to be taking on whoever our opponent ends up being. I'm not quite sure who that is yet, but I'm sure that it is going to be very exciting. Until then, stay safe out there, stay healthy. We'll see you later. Bye-bye.